Okay, so we're going to take a look at a model of the female ovary. So let's start with the big chunks. First thing you're going to see is we've got the ovary right here, and we've got its accompanying fallopian tube. Remember, the fallopian tube has lots of different names because, anatomy, right? So we also call it the uterine tube or the oviduct. I think fallopian tube is probably the one that most people are familiar with. And the fallopian tube has a couple of different parts. This enlarged area here is called the infundibulum. Looks like a little umbrella sitting on top of the ovary. And these little finger-like projections at the end are referred to as the finimbri. Okay? So we have the finimbri here. And the finimbri are in charge of waving. So they actually wave together, and they actually make a little bit of a current that helps to sweep the eggs once they're released from the ovary right up into the fallopian tube so that they can start their journey and not end up falling back into the bottom of the abdomen. So over here, this membrane over here is part of the broad ligament of the uterus. This is the part that actually surrounds the ovary and the oviduct, i.e. the fallopian tube. So you can see these blood vessels that sort of divide it in half, running longitudinally. The ones that are down here closer to the ovary we refer to as the mesovarium, M-E-S-O, ovarium. The ones up on top we refer to as the mesosalpinx, okay? Mesosalpinx. Now, inside the ovary, at any given time, we have a bunch of eggs in various stages of development. So, way over here at the end, we've got these eggs that are referred to as the primordial follicles. Remember, that is one egg surrounded by one layer of follicle cells. Every female is born with however many primordial follicles she's going to have for the rest of her life. So at any given time, maybe a couple of these are drawn into development. So the follicle cells around these eggs, or soon-to-be eggs, start to multiply. And our follicle gets bigger and bigger and bigger. At the same time those follicle cells are multiplying, we've got the egg inside starting to undergo our oogenesis, okay? And so we're going to go from our primary oocyte and work our way into becoming a secondary oocyte. Now, all this time, the estrogen secreted by the follicle cells is basically helping that egg to mature. If I swing over this way, hopefully you can see there is a hole right here. And this hole is representing our stage of the cycle called ovulation. So this is where we went from being a developing follicle to a mature follicle that actually released an egg and got swept into the fallopian tube. So it's a surge of the hormone LH, which causes ovulation. And then we get our released egg gets swept up into the fallopian tube. Remember, at the point where this secondary oocyte is getting swept up into the fallopian tube, it still has its normal number of chromosomes. It's not until it gets released and it's up here in the fallopian tube that it's actually going to undergo its final stage of development and turn into that haploid cell, that cell that only contains half the number of chromosomes and is ready to actually combine with the nucleus from a sperm cell. Now, while our released soon-to-be egg is going through its journey, turning into an egg, either meeting a sperm or not, and basically going down the fallopian tube. While that's going on, meanwhile, back at the ovary, these follicle cells, their job is not done. They're going to turn into this structure here called the corpus luteum. And corpus luteum literally means body yellow. Corpus means body, luteum means yellow. So this is the yellow body. The structure is in charge of producing the estrogen and especially progesterone, which is going to keep the lining of the uterus intact so that it's not shed. So this structure is going to keep producing these hormones for at least 14 days. And at the end of that 14 days, if there is no pregnancy, it's going to slowly degenerate into this structure, the corpus albicans, otherwise known as the white body, which is just a little piece of white scar tissue on the ovary. But if a person does get pregnant, this structure is going to receive a signal from the embryo, and it's going to hang around and keep producing hormone until the placenta forms, and that's going to take a whopping 3 months. And then finally, at the end of that time, degenerate into the corpus albicans. So there you have it, what's going on in the ovary.